Hello and thank you for joining me for today's webinar, which is responsive web design for tour operators. I wanted to strip things right back down to basics and talk about responsive websites and how to build them. So the question is, what is a responsive website? A responsive website is a website that responds to the browser and device characteristics of the user and adapts the content appropriately. So we're not just talking about whether it's mobile or a desktop device. We're also looking at whether it's a Windows or a Mac, Android or iOS. So that would be the operating system. We're also talking about browser as well. So whether it's on Safari, Chrome, Firefox, or Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge. And then we've also got to factor in the screen size, the dimensions of the browser, the settings on the browser, screen orientation. So essentially, your website must be able to respond to all of these factors. Straight away, it needs to be able to detect them and adapt its size accordingly. So when we're talking about designing a responsive website, it's about giving the same level of experience across all devices and all platforms. So we're not talking about giving the same experience, because if we do that, then people are going to be in a situation where they're expecting to be able to interact with the website in a certain way, and they're not able to. In that way, the level of experience would then be affected. So it's all about the level. Now, the question to ask here is, do I need to have a responsive website? The answer to that is no, you don't. But you do have to have a website designed for mobile if you want to rank on Google and if you want to secure bookings. And this is from Resd's annual survey in 2016. And 67% of smartphone users said they were more likely to purchase from a business's mobile-friendly website. Essentially, if you don't have a mobile-friendly website, you're going to be losing a lot of smartphone users. So the alternative then to building a responsive website, so if you don't want to build a responsive website, the alternative would be to build yourself a desktop site or stick with the non-responsive site you already have, and then build a second mobile site that would be hosted on a subdomain. Okay, so it might be mobile.resd rather than just resd.com. If you did that, you'd essentially be doubling your work, right? Because you'd be having to get your website built twice. And on an ongoing basis, every time you wanted to make a change to any of your products or anything relating to your about us or any offers, you'd have to do that same thing twice on both your desktop site and your mobile site. Also, when you're talking about analytics and reporting and seeing how your website's actually performing, you're then going to have to look at two separate reports, which again is just going to complicate things. It's going to make things a lot longer and a lot more costly as well. So as you can see, your best bet is to have a responsive website. So when building a responsive website, there's a few factors that I'm going to talk to today. First one is your menus and navigation setup, the images that you've got on your site, font sizes, and how you can make them easy to read, any tables and information you want to display, how people interact with the site, how to ensure that it's a speedy website, and also looking at your goals and the user's end goals as well. So menus navigation. First point, always use top menus. As you can see here, we have Iwara Travel. And as you can see, that image, it starts off with all your menu options spread across the top. As you condense it, it then moves into what we call a burger menu. The reason why we would always go top menus rather than side menus is because they occupy vital space. And if you then congest the size of the website and compress it, you'll notice that any side menus will just take over the full website. So the top menu allows this burger menu to happen. And we'd always say to transition to the burger menu. There happens to be a bit of a trend at the moment. I've noticed a few websites where no matter what size of desktop or screen you're occupying, the burger menu will always be present. We'd advise against that because essentially every time someone's looking for information and they're wanting to explore your site, you're creating a barrier for them. You're hiding what those available options are. Now, on mobile, it's sensible because, as we know, once you compress your page to mobile, there then becomes a lot more scrolling. So the idea is that we can hide the menu and people know where to go to. But on desktop, there's no reason to do that. You're just going to add unnecessary friction. So always transition rather than having a desktop burger menu. Quick tip as well. So in terms of burger menus, always put your burger menu at the top right. Okay, so as you can see here on Iwara, in the top right hand corner you have those 3 lines. That's what we call a burger menu. And the reason for that is because most people are right-handed, and it's just going to be a lot more easy, a lot more comfortable for them to select the menu when it's on the right-hand side. Although if you are building a website purely for left-handers, obviously switch it over to the left. 40% of consumers are going to turn to a competitor's site after a bad mobile experience. If you're making sure that it's easy for them to navigate and to get around your website, then more likely to stay with you. So images, ensure that they auto resize. I've seen a few websites where unfortunately they don't. So when the website is pressed or when accessing it on a mobile device, the image overlaps, and it creates this kind of like pinching effect where you can pinch it in and out. That the definition of that is a non-responsive website. Okay, so make sure that your images auto resize with the website once it compresses. Keep them light as well. So we'll touch more on this when we go into speed. Essentially, the more graphic intense your website is, or the higher quality an image, then the heavier it's going to be, and the slower the website will then be. So try and keep them as light as possible. Landscape images as well are better for responsiveness. So essentially, if you have portrait images, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that when you resize them, they tend to get squished a little bit. If you use a landscape image, then it will resize perfectly and it will look incredible on your website. In terms of fonts, they need to be big enough to be read. I mean, that's fairly obvious. We would recommend a minimum of 14 points. So that's your font size, a minimum of 14 points. And as you can see here, a case study showing that switching from 10 points to 14 points can give some really amazing benefits. Okay, so if you notice that your font size is smaller than that, just switch it up. Really simple, straightforward, and it will have a massive difference for your website performance. So some of you may have different tours that you want to compare. Maybe you're showing those currently in a table. Maybe they're just side by side in different content cards. However, if they are in a table, then once they're compressed, once they're put on a mobile site, then you can notice that some of the columns then go to the next line below. Maybe it doesn't resize. Maybe you've taken a snapshot of it and it's in the form of an image, which will then make the size even smaller and unreadable. Something that Werewolf have done here, so thanks for this example, guys, is that they have a table. Once you compress it, it then becomes tabs, and it's really easy. You'll notice also that instead of having the side column with the words and a tick next to them, they just then transition to full text in each of those tabs to just make it really clear and really easy for people to access their information on a smaller device. So user interaction. So this is mainly focusing on the way that the people will, when they're on the desktop, they generally use a pointer or a mouse. There are touchscreen computers at the moment, but they're not necessarily the most comfortable. So essentially, we need to look at making sure that a website is accessible with thumbs as well as with a pointer or a mouse. So the main characteristic of a thumb is that they're bigger and they're less precise. So we need bigger spacing between elements than we used to, and that would be a minimum of 45 pixels selection area. So if you have any kind of links on your website, if you have, when your menu options expand, for example, any call to action buttons, make sure that all these things have a minimum of 45 pixels space around them. And that way, people can be more accurate and make the selection that they want to make. Because there's nothing more frustrating than when you're trying to browse and you're trying to click on something and you keep clicking on the wrong thing. Just make it really easy for people to select. Hover effects is a big thing because obviously on desktop, people are able to hover over images and see different kinds of information beneath them. However, when you're on a mobile, that's impossible. People are less likely as well, especially older people, less likely to interact with the website in any way other than clicking, right? So just making it really easy for these kind of people. essentially turn off your hover effect. If you have information that's hidden behind a hover effect, can you change the interaction? Or is it just going to be easier just to pull that information out and just get rid of that hover effect altogether? Again, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. People are more inclined to scroll on mobile. So as you can see here on the side, this is someone scrolling through our own website. Now, the thing with mobile devices, obviously, it's going to compress all the information and it's going to make it take up more space in terms of length, just making it really easy. So one thing that we do is we have sticky menus on some of our website. So as you're scrolling down, the menu will follow you throughout the page. We sometimes have back to top buttons. As you can see here, we have a floating button. This is what we call a floating menu. So as soon as someone clicks that menu, they can just go straight back up to the top and it opens that menu out automatically. But we do also have back to top buttons as well, which is a similar kind of design, but people just click it and it takes them back to the top. And if they want to click the menu, they can. We're just giving them the option there, just making it really easy for them to get back to the top of the website. So second to last point we're going to look at is speed. Very important to make sure that your website is fast so you don't lose customers. Auto playing videos on mobile devices we turn off because, as you can see here on the right, we have a beautiful website from Revelstoke Reservations, absolutely amazing video there. But if you try and load that video at the same time you load the website and you're maybe on a low data connection on your mobile, then it's going to take longer to load. People become frustrated. So it's really important that we do everything we can to make that website load. On smaller devices, you'll notice if you wanted to go to Revelstoke, you could have it on full screen. You'll notice that the video is working, and as you then compress the website, make the window smaller, you'll notice it then transitions to this image that we can see here. On the same vein, say no to sliders. So if you have any sliders or you want a slider in your hero area, for example, again, instead of just loading one image, your website is going to load 4, 5, 6 images, right? And you can only see one image at a time. I mean, there's several reasons against sliders. If you just type it on the internet, give it a general search, there's a lot of people who are now against them. But this is one good reason to say no. Find your best image, stick to that. Image sizes. We touched on this earlier on. We would recommend using software such as TinyJPEG before you upload your images to the website. So you may have some stunning pictures that are just a huge file size. Using a program like this will then compress the file size and it will enable you to still have a really high quality image, but it's not going to be as heavy and it's going to be a lot quicker for your website to then load. Don't go over the top with this stuff because, again, you see it all the time where you go onto a website and the image is poor quality and you just think, why would I bother? So it's just making sure that it's really stunning so it looks like it was uploaded onto PickThrive yesterday. So removing non-essential page animations. We touched on it with hover animations before, but this is generally more about animations where things change colors, or you may have seen these counters. So you go down a website and it will start calculating how many visitors have been on this website or how many people bought these stores. It looks really cool. I like the look of it, but again, these kind of animations, they slow down the website, make it load a lot slower. So again, if you can avoid having one of these kind of animations, especially when it comes to the mobile side, then do so. And again, there's generally settings that you can play with in the back end of your website, or your web developer can do that, which will enable them to switch off these kind of effects when a website is being loaded on a smaller screen or on a mobile device. Just like I mentioned there, 43% of consumers unlikely to return to a slow loading mobile site. So in terms of goals and conversions, this is probably one of your most important aspects, if not the most important. So your calls to action buttons, your conversion buttons need to be easy to find, and you need to reduce the friction as much as you can. So we've got an example of Coast & Co here. When the website is on full screen, you'll notice that there is a Book Now button in the menu. There's also a sticky sidebar as well with the Book Now button. So as someone scrolls through the website, that will stay with them. But you'll also notice that now, once it's on the smaller screen, which is essentially on a mobile setup, the Book Now button then pops up at the bottom of the screen and it will stay there with your website visitor the whole time that they scroll through that screen. So again, it's just making it really easy to find and reducing that friction as much as possible. Any hyperlinks that you've got on your website need to stand out. In the 90s, everyone knew what a hyperlink looked like, right? It was bright blue, it was underlined, and it stood out against that black font that was so common back then. As much as you can make them stand out, so if you can make them slightly bigger than the rest of the text, make the color really stand out, add bold effects, underline effects like we just spoke about, whatever you can do. Just making it really easy. If your website visitor has the goal of finding out more about this particular bit of information they want to click on it, you need to make it obvious that they can. But coming on to the third point there, consistency is key. So don't switch it out. Once you have font style for your hyperlinks, stick with it. Because if you're changing it on every page, if you're changing it in every section, then your visitor's not actually going to be able to follow the logic behind that. Remember, this is probably the first time they've been on your website, whereas you know your website inside and out. And the same with button styles. So we personally never go more than 2 different button colors. Again, just so it's so obvious to your website visitor what buttons they can and can't click. So yeah, as you can see here, these guys have used a light blue color, and throughout the website, you'll see that light blue color on every page. So 55% of purchase-related conversions occur within 1 hour of initial mobile search. So again, making sure that it's really easy for your client to get through and make that conversion is really important. So they're not going to have more than 1 hour to actually get to know your website. Just make it as intuitive as you possibly can. Thanks a lot for listening to my presentation on responsive website design. You can email me if you have any further questions on russell@tourismtiger.com, or you can contact us on sales@tourismtiger.com as well.